So we've been talking about drawing this wine glass, this glass of wine glass with wine in it. And we the last video I did. Apparently, I need to touch this up first. Last video I did was talking about approaching drawing this wine glass and what's called the construction method. There's several things going on, but that's a good overall idea when you're talking about figuring out bounding boxes and proportions and geometrical sorts of things in a way that is going to allow you, if you spend time, to get pretty precise, pretty exact. And that is definitely one way of doing it. It's not the only way of approaching it. This is appealing to me at some times and very not appealing at other times. But another approach I've been talking about, is just to get a sense of what I call not just an envelope, which is kind of a common idea, but to add in a little bit of gesture to that idea of an envelope, to get more just to get more of an overall fun feeling, emotional response. So if I was to imagine what a 3 to 4 sided gestural envelope for this object might be, even though there's not a lot of curve up at the top, it just feels like there is to me. So I'm going to make sort of a curvy line there. I really could just kind of think of this as kind of a triangle almost. Part of the idea of getting an envelope is to hone in without being so crazy exact as this. Hone in on sense of overall proportions. And the simpler it is, I feel like, the better. So this shape, just sort of I kind of call this the I don't know, the head of a rocket or something like that. But it's pretty easy to get a sense of if the proportions of that kind of thing are similar to the proportions of the original sketched in one. I am gonna say, 3 sides not quite enough. And I'm gonna think this definitely has a nice curve to it down there. And then I'm gonna think of a gestural envelope as something a little bit more like that. And let me see, over his side would be something like that. And then at this point, I can just start sort of sketching this rectangle, this gestural rectangle in. Especially if I do it right next to here, it's going to be relatively easy to at least figure out the height, the top and the bottom. So I feel like this is maybe a little too curvy, but it's okay. That not quite exact, but it gets me off to a sporting chance it gets me off to a start that's pretty close, and obviously I've spent a lot less time doing that than this. I will say that doing this seems to have a amazing way of making this kind of thing make that much more sense. And then it's sort of like your subconscious is doing a lot of this sort of calculations and whatnot. But I think it's a great thing to just sort of start off and try. So after I started something like that, I would still think to myself, well, it's still a cylindrical item, and I know it's going to be symmetrical. So I will try to create a center axis that will be the stem, and I will try to make the envelope act in a way that is equidistant from that. But I'm not as concerned about it. And then I might come in and just imagine the cup part of the wine glass. And once again, this curve doesn't necessarily represent anything specific other than it feels like if I was gonna sketch a what I call a bloated tic-tac-toe around it, it might be something like that. Something a little bit more like that. And in a similar way, I'm carving away at it, getting a better idea for where the things feel like they should go, not so much measuring them. I can tell this is gonna curve around here. That was fun. I'm going to try to get a little, I'm going to try a different approach. That wasn't working. I'm going to hold my pencil. I'm going to get my pencil more in my overhand hold and use the side so I can get this idea of the cup. The one I was doing before, because this getting too short, I was using the point tip like that, and that was not really kind of working to try to make it flow back and forth like a, yeah, I don't know, this is almost like, I think of like a swing. And I'm trying to not use my fingers. But I'm sketching that in. That's mostly fine. And like I think I've mentioned, there's a lot of fun things going on with this, with the base of the wine glass that I'm gonna address in subsequent videos. But it would be something like that for at least the very bottom part of it. I can tell that there would be this part that would sort of be angling in and creating kind of its own little, like I said, trapezoid. It's got sides that are concave. And then we'll keep coming down here in a straight down fashion. I'm going to quickly kind of, one of the things that I'm going to conceive of the bottom of this wine glass as is sort of a tipped upside down bowl. Because what's really going on is there's a lot of, it starts way up here, and it's a tapering, gradually tapering cylindrical cone kind of item. And by the time it gets to the very bottom, you know, it has made some curves along like that. But it's a nice way to sort of think of how a cylinder can taper and just of breaking it up into smaller chunks. Starting to look like a fried egg there. That's one of the things that I have been wanting to mention about how I would approach the base of the glass. I will be doing more on that. So this approach is definitely has things going for it, not the least of which is I'm kind of already blocked that in. I have a pretty good idea. It seems fine. At this point, though, I would say what will start happening with this approach is you'll start realizing how something doesn't seem right, and you won't be very sure of why. So you'll still be you know, sort of still needing aspects of this if you do want to tighten things up and make sure it's actually straight up and down, and that these are equal distance from the center line, and that they are not quite as wide as the widest point on the glass, but pretty close. And yeah, that's just more fun. I'm not gonna kid you, but I will say the more you're drawing, the more you run into things and you're trying to draw that are, especially groupings of things, are very can be very tricky to draw. This is one object, so if something's sort of off, it's not that critical. But if I'm trying to draw a wine glass next to a wine bottle or something else in a still life, for example, then understanding sort of angles and that stuff is still going to come in extremely handy. Let me pause for now and do whatever it is I'm going to do next. But that's sort of a block-in for sketching in, roughing in, a lot of different terms for it. Something in an envelope sort of fashion, but what I call a gestural envelope. A strict envelope is more straight lines and a little bit more structured. I'm not leaving, am I? One of the things that is beneficial about even some sort of envelope is that you can still imagine diagonals, even if it's a very non-consistent sort of shape. For example, if that was kind of a gestural envelope of something, I still can, by knowing these corners and by judging the angles of those, it's still going to help me quite a bit. I'll keep doing examples of that sort of thing, probably with the apple. But even if I was sort of looking at this top envelope part and comparing it to the one I'm drawing over here, those angles are going to help me confirm just how far, if I'm off, and if so, in what direction. That's enough for that. Okay.